On today's episode, Liz and I sit down with the budget savvy bride creator, Jessica Bishop. She opens up about all kinds of tips and tricks to help couples save some serious cash on their wedding day. From silk flowers to doing things yourself, we've got the answers to helping you save money on your big day. Jessica Bishop is the author of The Budget Savvy Wedding Planner and Organizer and founder of thebudgetsavvybride.com, a wedding planning resource that was built to help couples all across the country plan their big day the savvy way. We hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to Stronger Marriage Connection. I'm Dr. Liz Hale, clinical psychologist, along with my friend and colleague, Dr. Dave Schramm, amazing professor up at Utah State. And together we have dedicated our life's work to bringing you the best we have in valid marital research, along with a few tips and tools to help you create the marriage of your dreams. Well, it is that time of year. Spring is in the air. Buds are blooming, and so is love as we approach the most popular time of the year for weddings, right, Dave?
That's right.
Well, around here, we emphasize that planning your marriage is really far more crucial than planning your wedding. However, one's wedding day is truly special, and it's often full of symbolism and deep meaning, and the planning can feel overwhelming. Where do you even start, right? Well, today we have a few answers for you. Actually, Jessica Bishop has the answer. She has many of them, actually. She's the author of The Budget Savvy Wedding Planner and Organizer, and clearly she has put her heart and soul into every detail of wedding planning for you to create a memorable day without breaking the bank, one that you'll look forward to looking back on fondly throughout all the years to come. Welcome to Stronger Marriage Connection, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I definitely share your thoughts on prioritizing your marriage and putting as much effort and time into that, more so than just the wedding day itself. So we're on the same page.
You're the full package then, Jessica. We love hearing that here. You include in your organizer everything wedding, from budget and bridesmaids to decor and more. Where did your interest in creating this very smart and thorough resource come from?
Yeah, so I started the Budget Savvy Bride. It'll be 16 years ago in May of 2024, which feels like such a long time ago, but I was actually planning my own wedding. I was on a very tight budget, right out of college and, on a very entry-level salary. And during that time of being engaged, I got laid off from that first job I had. And so that made our already challenging situation of planning a wedding on a pretty frugal budget even more challenging. So along the way, I was just keeping track of my ideas and inspiration I was coming across along the way to save money and still make things look beautiful because, us girls, we've been dreaming of our wedding day all our lives, right? And it just really grew, and it reached a lot of people, I think, because at that point we were in the recession of 2008, 2009. And so it just grew really organically from there. And then it became a more nationwide resource to help couples all across the country.
Wow, I think that's great. For 16 years now. Good for you. Do you go to wedding venues much? Jessica, where do you promote yourself, would you say now?
Yeah, I would say that the majority of our reach is through online media. It always really has been. We started with just a blog, and it has expanded into, a website with tons of amazing resources, including, free printables, a whole gallery of real weddings that couples can explore to see how far their budget can stretch, depending on what area of the country they're in and the different things they can do to save money. As well as, our podcast, the Bouquet Toss, and the book, of course. So, I don't attend as many weddings as you might expect or assume, but, whenever I do get the chance, it is a real thrill for me.
Mm-hmm. I love this topic, this area, Jessica. I think is so relevant, especially today when people are really trying to pinch their pennies and to make this really expand to do as much as they can on a small budget. I might even add, Jessica, that it's perhaps even more so here in Utah. The average age is much less than the national average. So couples marry young. they have less money for their wedding. So this topic is, I would say, especially relevant to the couples and the brides here in Utah. So you advise a couple to begin their planning by imagining their dream wedding. What are some of the questions we should ask ourselves and each other when envisioning this key day? For example, do you just toss out a budget for starters and then dream big, or where do you begin?
Well, budget is definitely a huge practical factor in the equation. Like, we can't deny that. It costs money to plan an event, a celebration of this size. And oftentimes it is the first and sometimes the only time that couples are planning an event this large. And that does require funds to do it. But I always recommend couples start by really thinking about, like, what is the purpose and intention behind having a wedding? What's their underlying motivation? Is it, like, are they getting swayed by all of the Instagram, inspiration? Are they wanting to show off to their friends? Or is it really about, like, celebrating what this union is and really realizing, like, focusing on the intention of the day itself. Also really exploring together, like, what their values are, not just about their wedding day in particular, but as a couple. I mean, these are all conversations that are super important to hammer out and make sure that you're aligned before you're heading into a marriage. And so that can be reflected in the choices you make for your wedding day as well. And that helps you to prioritize along the way the things that you are going to want to spend more money on when it comes to the wedding day itself. And also just, what's going to make it fun? What's going to make this an enjoyable experience for us? What's going to make the most impact of us enjoying this day with all of our people?
Yeah, it's great. Great start. Now, you also suggest a couple start by tackling the what you call the big five, right?
Yes.
Briefly describe for our viewers and listeners the 5 elements that really shape a wedding budget and provide a solid foundation to work from.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the biggest factors that especially goes into cost is your guest count, right? Because for every guest you add to your list, you're having to spread whatever budget you have by an additional person. And so that's a really crucial one to figure out. And that, goes into, like, how you want to feel, on the day. Surrounded by a lot of people, big, exciting energy, or maybe something more intimate. And so that would be, one of the other 5 elements, which is kind of like the vibe, like how you want to feel.
So guests are really expensive then, Jessica, right? Pardon me.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about it, it's sheer mathematics, right? It's like, for every additional guest, it's an additional meal, potentially drinks if you're serving, alcohol at your wedding. It's an extra chair. It's an extra place setting. It's, for every 8 to 10 guests, it's another table at your reception, which needs another linen, another centerpiece. And so you can see how the costs just add up with each additional guest that you add to your list. So that is a huge one. It's a crucial one. And I think it's one of the most challenging areas too, because everyone has lots of people in their life that they love and they would want to celebrate with, but it does come at a cost. And so that has to be weighed very carefully, I think. And then otherwise in the big 5, I would say, the venue, like where this thing is going to take place. Like, are you doing it close to home? Do you and your partner, your fiance, like, live locally, like close to the majority of your guest list, or is it going to be farther away? Are you going to plan a destination wedding? That can really play into the cost of things. As well as, the style that you're going for. Do you want, a black tie occasion? Like, that can come with extra costs as well. If you're going to have servers doing past hors d'oeuvres, that's more sometimes like labor and, staffing costs than a catered buffet style meal. And so, and finally, the 5th element, I would say, is sort of your timeline. Like, how long is your engagement period going to be? How long do you have to plan? Not only plan, but also, like, save and pay for what this event is going to ultimately be. And so that is what I call, and refer to as the big 5 when it comes to your wedding.
Sounds good and expensive. Well, we appreciate that. Dave and I, we've had Dr. Bill Doherty on a couple times, and we love him. I love what he says. He often states that as soon as a couple becomes engaged, then the wedding has begun. So not only do you now suddenly have a partner you're working with, but you have in-laws, right? Congratulations. You're all family. And I'd like to remind couples, I don't know how you feel about this, Jessica and Dave both, that while it is your day, it's not just your day, right? Not only have you been dreaming about your wedding day, but it's quite possible that your new mother-in-law has also been dreaming through the years about your wedding day as well. So what do you advise in bringing together all these various opinions and dreams? So, the couple and the parents, where do you start, Jessica?
Yeah, of course. Well, I would say, first of all, like at Budget Savvy Bride and on our podcast, The Bouquet Toss, we talk a lot about, making sure that the decisions you make feel aligned with you and like in alignment with your values and those things that are important to you as a couple. But, in conjunction with that, obviously is, the families that are involved. And I think the key to navigating these conversations or these decisions is conversation, right? It's open communication. It's asking your families and being respectful and listening what elements of the wedding are important to them and considering those things in your decisions. It's ultimately like a compromise in a lot of situations. Parents might have a very different idea of like what they want things to look like. I think for couples who might be getting married a little bit later as like things are starting to skew a little bit older, like overall, couples might be more established financially. They may want to pay for their entire wedding themselves. And so, doing that, might remove some of the parents' contribution in terms of like how these decisions are made if they're not contributing financially. So it's a very delicate balance, I would say, no matter the circumstances. And it's so individual and so personal, I think, to every couple. I always say that like every wedding is like a snowflake because each couple is coming into these relationships and to this planning process with any number of different sets of like personal circumstances, the way they grew up, the families they were raised by, and the expectations that go along with that. And so it really is just like a time of just getting really clear, learning how to communicate openly. And I think that's the best way forward in any relationship, really, is that open communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Jessica, I'm a father of 3 daughters. We've had a wedding. Yeah, it was expensive.
Bless your heart. My dad too.
I know. Yeah, so we have our youngest is a son. We have 3 daughters. So let's get down to like what sets you apart from other wedding organizers, right? You love helping couples save money on a wedding with the absolute best wedding tips. Couples and parents will be happy to hear that you don't have to spend a fortune to have a fabulous wedding. What are some of your favorite go-to budget saving tips?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, there's so many. I mean, definitely within the book, The Budget Savvy Wedding Planner and Organizer, there's ways to save no matter what aspect of the wedding you're talking about. And I think, getting really clear on which aspects are super important to you is like key first, and then you can find those areas of maybe less importance where you can maybe make some swaps. We call them like savvy swaps to save money in areas. And so some of those kind of like easy swaps to make are, if you are hosting a reception where you're, serving alcohol, like being able to, instead of offering a full open bar, maybe limiting it to just beer and wine, maybe a signature cocktail. That's a great way to cut back for sure. When it comes to decorations, there's so many great options out there to DIY things, rather than like, bringing in a lot of fancy like rental items. But one of our favorites, that has kind of popped up in the last, I would say, 6 or 7 years is a company called Something Borrowed Blooms. They do these amazing rent and return silk floral arrangements. And one thing that I think is a huge sticker shock for so many couples is just the cost of fresh flowers. It's not just the product itself. It's the time that the florist has to spend arranging things. It's, ordering extra product in case certain flowers come wilted. They have to have more than what they need to work with. So those extra costs, really pile up. And especially we've seen a lot of price fluctuations in like a post-pandemic world. And so, and inflation and all of that. And so really I think Something Borrowed Blooms, what they have done is like absolutely brilliant, because you know exactly what you're spending, you know exactly what you're getting, and there's no surprises. And that's really helpful for couples on any budget, you know, because you just know exactly what it's going to cost you at the end of the day. And they're absolutely stunning. So definitely
flowers are so expensive. I did not realize how expensive flowers were.
I
like
know.
Real flowers. Could not believe it. Yeah. So I love that. I've never even heard of it. Yeah.
Planning a wedding is a real eye opener, Dave, isn't it? It's like,
it
my
is.
goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of your other tips? I'm taking notes here, Jessica.
Yeah, it truly is. You know, I think obviously guest count, like keeping the guest count as low as possible is definitely like step one, honestly. I would say, you know, like there's lots of sort of alternatives to some of the more traditional like wedding items that you might consider in your sort of like line items in your budget, such as, you know, like a photo booth rather than potentially like hiring like a local, you know, photographer or a company to come and set up like some sort of professional situation. There are options that you can find online that they ship similar to Something Borrowed Blooms. They ship it to you, you set it up, you return it, send it back, and it can be a lot more affordable than some of the more local items. But, and those are great for couples who are like on a really strict budget and are maybe have a little bit more time to do some things themselves instead of spending money. Because at the end of the day, it's always kind of a trade-off, right? Like it's either going to cost you extra time or it's going to cost you extra money. And so you really have to decide which one of those you're willing to part with or which one you have more of when making a lot of those decisions. So I think those are really great ways. And, you know, like nowadays, it's incredible the amount of options there are out there for, you know, wedding dresses, bridesmaids dresses, suits for the grooms, where you can get absolutely beautiful, sometimes custom tailored items for like a fraction of the cost of what things used to cost for a wedding. And so really just, you know, educating yourself. That's one of the things that we really do at Budget Savvy Bride, is just sharing these resources and these retailers that couples might not know about otherwise, because it's obviously often the first and only time they're planning a wedding. So why would they know? So yeah, we really try to be a source and a resource that's really comprehensive for every stage of the wedding to help save.
I love that, because it can take so much time to sift through it, because there's so many, like thousands of options, this and that. It's worth the time and my time or money to say, hey, what are the go-to, you know, places? I'd never heard of the silk flowers or other types of things. So I love actually what you've put together, and it sounds like it's just saves so much time. Time is money, right?
Yes, I have let my just hyperfixation and obsession on weddings benefit everyone else. So it's definitely a passion of mine. I love saving money. I would call myself, you know, like a Maxxinista, you know, like I love shopping a deal and getting a deal at TJ Maxx. And that just spilled over into the wedding world when I planned my own wedding. And yeah, I love helping people and helping them save money, because then they can use that money on the things that are maybe more important to them down the line. You know, like one of my big soapboxes is, you know, I don't think that couples should be taking out a loan or taking on any debt to pay for a wedding. I think, you know, in a marriage, finances are such a big, you know, issue and can be a very big source of stress, and anything that you can do to alleviate extra stress in your marriage, I think is important. And so, you know, there's been some really disturbing statistics in the news about the increase in the number of couples who take out loans to pay for their wedding. And I'm just like, no, don't do that. We can help you save money. We can help you, you know, plan a wedding within your financial means so that you can start your marriage off on the strongest financial footing possible. And that's like a big part of the heart behind like why we do what we do.
We'll be right back after this brief message. And we're back. Well, let's dive right in.
Like Dave was saying, Jessica, there's so many options. It can be overwhelming. And that's really where you come in, is really helping couples find the right vendors who fit their vision and budget. How do you guide them in that search? How do you find wedding professionals who can bring this wedding to life just in their perfect style?
Yeah. So, for a long time on Budget Savvy Bride, we shared a lot of resources that, could help them save in the different aspects of the wedding that they needed to buy or, things they needed to order or collect for their wedding day. But the vendor side of things was one that we didn't really have a resource for until recently. So it took us 2 years to develop it, but we recently launched our vendor platform. It's called the Savvy Wedding Guide. And in it, vendors can join and share their business with our audience of couples who are looking for their products and services for their wedding. And I think one big issue in the wedding industry is, it's not always clear like what things cost. And you can see beautiful images on Pinterest or Instagram. And, it can be marketed as a DIY wedding, but actually it was all executed by a professional and it cost a lot of money to do it. And so one of the things that we've always done at Budget Savvy Bride is when we publish real weddings and feature them, the couple gives a full budget breakdown. And so, how far, how much they spent, what they spent it on. You can see what they've paid for vendors in their area and all of the vendor information is listed. So that's always kind of been there. But now with the Savvy Wedding Guide and the vendor marketplace, now the vendors who choose to be listed on our platform can share their pricing information. So there's not that mystery involved. And so we're really just getting started and getting that out there. We put so much thought and care and love into building it and bootstrapping it ourselves. And so now we just want to find more vendors to be listed there so that the couples can find them in a really efficient and clear and transparent way.
That is nice, bringing those two sides together. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, again, Jessica, we so appreciate your thoughtfulness on budgeting, not breaking the bank, certainly not going into debt. We love the fact that you also too focus on the marriage more than the wedding. We love the fact that you encourage couples to seek pre-marriage counseling, especially. I'd love to know, how is that advice received when you mention it? And do you have any ideas on how we could entice more couples to enter therapy together before the wedding day?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure in your experience, you can speak to this a lot more than I can, but it always seems to be this thing of, people don't think to enter counseling or couples therapy until there's a problem, right? And I think that's not the best approach. I think, in my own experience, doing, couples counseling has enabled me to learn better communication tools. It has helped encourage like more vulnerable and deeper conversations that we might not have, felt comfortable, opening up that like Pandora's box otherwise, without sort of the safety of maybe that third party there. And so I think it's just so beneficial. And I do think that there is a bit of a stigma against it still. I would love to be part of the movement, like championing couples counseling and ending that stigma around it, because I think it's so valuable. And the tools that you can learn by working with a professional will impact every relationship that you have, not just your marriage. And so I'm just a big advocate for therapy in general, if I'm honest. Yes. So, yeah.
There really are some great questionnaires and tools. And I might send this to you, Jessica. Maybe you might want to match those vendors with more brides and grooms, right?
Yeah.
Who are actually doing some of that pre-marriage work. Yeah.
A lot of wedding planners consider themselves also like an unofficial couples therapist. So just because the wedding planners are having to navigate and help the couple navigate those conversations with their families a lot of the time. And like mother-in-laws has a strong feeling about wanting to add these guests and how do I handle it, So, but yeah, definitely working with a licensed professional is always best. Wedding planners shouldn't become the de facto couples counselor. So. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. Jessica, we love your podcast as well, the Bouquet Toss, that focuses on what to keep and what to toss from wedding day planning. What has been one of your favorite interviews, I guess? That was a topic you wish everyone could hear.
Oh, Oh gosh, there's been so many, honestly. We started out the show by examining all of the wedding traditions that, we all are familiar with that are done at every wedding, from, giving the bride away, like the father walking her down the aisle, to like, where did bridesmaids and groomsmen come from? And where did the bouquet toss come from? And so those are really fun episodes just because it gives that historical context. So I always encourage people to start from the beginning, but we've had some really great conversations, in our newest season. We're currently in our 5th season, and we've talked about everything from like the legal considerations around getting married, from, needing permits and licenses and insurance and things like that. All super important, especially if you're doing a more DIY celebration. Like, we have a lot of couples who do things at home or in their backyard and things like that. And so there's a lot of just considerations to have, right? And then, all the conversations that we've had around counseling and couples therapy and working through those more emotional sides of things are great as well. So it's fun. Like, it's funny because I think the Bouquet Toss is a wedding planning podcast, but it's almost talking about a lot more of the other aspects that wedding planning brings into your life, and not always specifically the wedding day itself. But we did do a whole season of like the planning process from start to finish as well. So yeah,
you've done a really nice job, I think, merging the marriage and the wedding, those concerns that come up. Just overall, Jessica, do you have a favorite part of wedding planning where you just think, I could just do that every day?
The thing to me that I always come back to is what stands out to me most about every wedding I've attended. And often that is the ceremony. And I think obviously it is the whole purpose behind the event itself. And I want more couples to focus their time and energy on that ceremony aspect, from the meaning and the heart of it, not just how it looks or the aesthetics or the flowers or the decorations. And so, I'm a big advocate for, writing your own vows, personalizing your ceremony in whatever way you can, just to make it more meaningful. It really gives your guests, a look into your relationship and helps to get to know you better. And I think that only serves to help further support you as you enter your marriage. So yeah, I'm a big ceremony enthusiast.
I think that's beautiful. I think it also helps those couples that are in attendance reflect on their own vows, right? Reflect on their own sense of devotion and dedication to each other. I think that's just such a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. I know. It always strikes me every time I attend a wedding. I really it makes me think a lot about my own relationships.
I know, Dave, you really, pardon me, you love this idea of something borrowed blooms, right?
Yeah.
Flower rentals. And on your site, Jessica, I was looking at how when the box comes of these beautiful silk flowers, you open them up and there's still this hint of a floral, as if they were real flowers. They really go all out, don't they? Even helping you provide a bouquet to toss to a bridesmaid.
Yeah.
They provide that for like $20. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. It's really affordable. And again, like, it's just so clear and transparent. You know exactly what you're getting and what it's going to cost. And actually, my podcast co-host, Sari, she got married last month and she used Something Borrowed Blooms for her wedding. And so that was actually my first experience with being at an event with their flowers. I've obviously seen them in person. I've reviewed them and seen them, but it was my first time being at an event with them. And that was really special. And seeing how easy they were to set up. I mean, it's such a breeze, and it looks beautiful right out of the box. I mean, you can't beat it. I'm like, it literally costs probably, I think they say 70% less than similar flowers done by a professional florist. So, you can do your whole, wedding for like $500 compared to thousands, is like the typical quote for fresh flowers. So, and you don't have to DIY anything. Another route, obviously, that you could take with flowers is arranging fresh flowers yourself, but doing that the week of, or even the morning of your wedding, that's a lot of potential stress to add to your shoulders. So I love to say it's a very savvy solution because it saves you time, money, and stress. And that's like the 3 prongs to what is savvy, in my opinion. So, so yeah, we love Something Borrowed Blooms.
Yeah, time, money, and stress. I love
Yeah,
that.
that's good, isn't it?
Yeah, Jessica, what's a question that we haven't asked you yet that you want to make sure our viewers and listeners know about their savvy wedding planning?
Oh gosh. That's a good question. So I think one of the things that a lot of couples get hung up on is, if I can't afford to spend whatever the average wedding cost is, which according to the Knot, which is the biggest mainstream, wedding media platform out there, they're saying, closer to $35,000 for like the average American wedding right now, which is a lot of money. That's also, I think, close to the average starting salary for many, many people. And so that's a lot of money. And, depending on how you're paying for it, if you have family and friends, you might wonder like, well, how can I pull off a wedding if I don't have this much to spend? And so what I would say to couples in a position where they're like, I can't afford to spend that, what do I do? A great resource we have on the site is our Real Wedding section, where you can browse, weddings from all across the country. You can filter them by state, by budget, by season, and even by color palette. We're also adding in a feature where you can also filter by guest count, because that guest count and budget situation is so intertwined in a lot of cases. And so you can read stories and see budget breakdowns from couples who've been able to make it work on a lower budget, and glean ideas from those who have walked the path before you.
Nice.
So yeah, that would definitely be something. And then also, there's so many things that you can do to personalize your wedding without spending a lot of money. I'm a big fan of DIY projects. Not everybody is super crafty, but there's great tools out there. I think, I'm sure you guys might be familiar with Cricut. They're located out in Utah as well. I think their home office, and it's a great DIY cutting machine tool that you can use for, personalizing gifts, creating your own signage, table numbers, all sorts of decorative elements that you can personalize for your wedding and for gifts and things for many, many years beyond just the wedding. So I think it's a great investment and also a great way to add those personal touches without having to go and buy everything custom made on like Etsy or, through a specialty retailer. So if you have the time and can do some DIY stuff, you don't have to be a craft expert, but you can still make really beautiful, professional looking stuff affordably yourself. So that would be another thing that I would recommend.
Yeah, I love. My wife has a Cricut, by the way, Jessica.
I'm a Cricut fan, such a fan.
I'm curious, are they one of your vendors that you connect with? Or
we work with that. Yeah, they're not like a local vendor. So like our vendor directory is more for like local service providers. So everyone from the venues to the photographers to the caterers, florists, all of the above on the wedding day. But we do work with Cricut. They're one of our brand partners, and such a great fit because we've created lots of DIY projects over the years that we've shared as like tutorials on the website to help, brides and grooms like see how to make things themselves. And so we've done it too. And we've shared those processes and tutorials to show how easy it is and how anybody can do it. So yeah, we're big Cricut fans.
I think you've thought of everything, Jessica. Where can our viewers and listeners find out more about you, please?
Oh gosh, we're all over the place. You can find us primarily at thebudgetsavvybride.com. That's our website where you can browse our real weddings. You can get free printables that you can customize and print and download yourself for your invitations, programs, thank you cards, everything. As well as we have basically our own, what we call our wedding deals section, which is almost like a coupon site specifically for things for your wedding. So you can get lots of great discounts and deals there. And of course, our podcast is The Bouquet Toss, which you can find on any podcast platform. And my book is The Budget Savvy Wedding Planner and Organizer. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, all the places. And we're on social media pretty much everywhere at Budget Savvy Bride. So we're trying to reach people wherever and however we can, spreading the savvy wedding wisdom with as many couples as possible.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to put all those in our show notes for our listeners and viewers. So check out our show notes for all those links to all the wonderful resources that Jessica and her team offer. Okay, Jessica, before we wrap up, a couple of questions we like to ask all of our guests. The first one, according to all that you've seen in the wedding industry, what do you think is the key to a stronger marriage connection?
Yeah, I think, going back to something I mentioned earlier, and I'm sure you guys have hammered this home many times over the years, but I mean, communication truly is kindness. And I think there's never too much communication in relationships, whether it's your marriage or your families, and just showing up fully, openly, and vulnerably, and, complete transparency, complete honesty at all times, I think is really key to that trust. And, it's a vital foundation in your marriage. And so, however you have to work at it to get comfortable having those raw conversations, like you got to do it, because it is so, so important.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, thank you. What about this next question is our takeaway of the day? Of all the things that we've discussed today, is there a take-home message you want our listeners to remember?
Yeah, I think what I would say is, wedding planning is a great sort of like testing ground for the beginning of your marriage. It is so many lessons to be learned and tests to, go through together. Not just navigating your family relationships, but making decisions, prioritizing together, making compromises, communicating, and helping to build that strong foundation. At the end, you're not just planning a party. It's really setting, the foundation for your relationship and just fostering that connection and open communication. So, just enjoy the wedding planning process and be intentional, I think is my biggest advice.
Yeah. Love that intentionality. What about you, Liz? What's your takeaway of the day?
I think that's why Dr. Bill Doherty suggested that when the couple becomes engaged and they start planning that big venue, it's why the marriage has already begun. It is your big test. I love that. And I love how you say a wedding, I think like a marriage is just like a snowflake. Everyone is a little bit different, because it takes into consideration the personalities of that bride and groom, their family history, all the things leading up to that. I think that's what makes it really so memorable. And I love to know that, we don't need to put a lot of time, money, and stress into this. Those are the three factors to really monitor. I love that. Dave, what about you? Did I take away yours?
No, this is great. Yeah, it's been a helpful discussion. I've learned a lot. Silk flowers. I mean, that one. But beyond the silk flowers, brilliant is I think the expectations, right? Right up front, if each person can just share their expectations about what they envision, maybe he's like, oh, we're going to do it on the cheap and we're going to save all this money because we need the money. And she's like, no, I want this certain kind of food and I want this venue and things, to be open to sharing their dreams, kind of like their big day, and then aim for, I think, number one, understanding, right? Understanding and trying to see why they want what they do. So really getting inside, seeing it from their perspective, and then compromise and talking things out to help reduce some of the stress. Well, I thought you were going to do this, and this is a lot more than you thought. You said it was going to be. Kind of the arguments and the things that couples can have with this, it can be very stressful. So I think sitting down and talking about expectations right from the get-go, and then the constant communication, who's doing what and who's paying for what, back and forth, and having that open dialogue throughout the whole process. So that's my takeaway. Jessica, this has been such a joy, a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for taking time to come join us today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I really was happy to talk with you guys and enjoyed the conversation.
All right, friends, that does it for us. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
And remember, it's the small and simple changes that create a stronger marriage connection. Take care now.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a few minutes to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. When you hit the like button and leave a comment, your feedback helps us improve the show. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and connect with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and on Facebook at Stronger Marriage. Be sure to share with us what topics you want us to explore or what you loved about today's episode. If you want even more resources to improve your relationship connection, visit our website at strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producers Rex Polanis and Alexis Alcott and the team at Utah State University. And you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.